Welcome to this episode of Game and Earn. In today's video, we're going to go over some of the biggest gainers in terms of value over the last 31 days. Today, we are specifically going to be looking at PlayStation console games. We're going to take a look at both loose and complete in-box games to see where you can make some profits. With that out of the way, let's get to it and find some ways to game and earn. The first title I'd like to cover in this month's video comes from a legendary horror series. Silent Hill for the PlayStation 1 was the first title released for this new series created by Team Silent and published by Konami. Probably the most iconic horror game after Resident Evil, Silent Hill takes place in the city of the same name where strange occurrences are taking place and the player must navigate the town to find their daughter. Silent Hill is an extremely fun and often startling horror game, and fans loved it. It consistently ranks near the top of PlayStation 1 titles and has been sought after for quite a while. However, on October 19th, 2022, Christoph Gahn, the director of the original Silent Hill movie adaptation, stated the original creators at Konami are involved in several games currently in development. It sounds like there will be at the very least a remake and one new title, with the possibility for more than that coming down the pipeline. Days after that announcement happened, the price for Silent Hill spiked nearly 25%, crossing the $200 threshold for a complete in-box copy. It had only ever broken that plateau once before in April 2021, around the same time many other PS1 titles were spiking. It's currently coming back down a little bit, but it's still hovering around the $200 price range. If you're not a horror enthusiast and have a complete in-box copy, you're probably not going to do any better than now to sell. Next, I know it's going to be a boring pick, but I want to cover all of the Silent Hill games on PlayStation 2, specifically Silent Hill Shattered Memories. The last Silent Hill entry on the PS2, this actually came out after the first PlayStation 3 entry, is the most valuable. Basically, it's a reimagining of the very first Silent Hill title. Shattered Memories takes place in a slightly different version of the first title, with a few twists. With the announcement of new Silent Hill titles coming, every single Silent Hill PS2 title received a significant bump of roughly 20%. Shattered Memories, though, is by far the most expensive, and frankly has the best box art of the entire series. PlayStation 2 is known for many things, but one of the biggest strengths of the system is the deep horror genre library. With titles like Rule of Rose, Haunting Grounds, Kuon, and of course Silent Hill, if you like horror titles, you'll likely own a PS2. As for the price, Shattered Memories was sub $100 prior to the pandemic and has only seen its price increase since then. Horror games generally get a boost in October regardless, but the news dropping in October has sent this series price into overdrive. Shattered Memories is now in the same echelon as the heavy hitter horror titles on the system. However, this title is really rare and a fan favorite, so I'd be holding on to this title at the moment, and I could see myself buying it if the price drops too much. Alright, I heard you. No more Silent Hill titles this month. How about instead we talk about dinosaurs? In particular, Dino Crisis 2 for the PlayStation 1. I know, it's a horror title, I'm really sorry, but I think this title warrants a bit of a closer look. Dino Crisis 2 is a sequel that involves time travel and really the plot does not matter. It gets weird. It has dinosaurs though, and they try to kill you, so it's extremely fun to play. This title and its predecessor are both extremely fun, sort of off-the-wall adventure titles for the PS1. It used essentially the same camera style as Resident Evil titles and had you explore Edward City. It's not as much horror as the first title was, instead playing much more like an arcade-style game, but it's just as good as the first one, just a little bit different. As far as the price goes, this was just below the $100 mark, but is now currently sitting nearly 20% higher, a little bit below $120 for a complete in-box copy. It has strong sales volume as well, with around 9 copies sold a week. My thoughts are that this title will drop back down below $100, as it has spiked to the $120 range before. But I think there are just plenty of copies to go around. It isn't one of the most popular PS1 games either, so I'm selling anything above the $120 range. Alright, that's enough horror titles in succession. Now we can go over one of the most looked over genres of games for reselling. Sports. In particular, let's cover NCAA Football 14 for the PlayStation 3. This is, at the time of recording, the last NCAA title created, and still has active service today with a huge community. It sold fairly well, but NCAA football fans haven't had anything new since the title was released almost 10 years ago, so it's still played a lot, quite a bit to this day. But everything changed in 2021 when EA announced that NCAA football would be making a highly anticipated return on next generation consoles. That means in a year or so, we're going to have a new NCAA football title, and NCAA 14 is no longer going to be the last game in the series. Who knows how long the series is going to stay, but with the rules for player representation changing in recent years, I would expect that not to be a concern. NCAA 14 has long been a very valuable title, often fluctuating from $40 all the way to the peaks of $140. Over the last 2 years, though, it spiked up to $140 multiple times, and it appears to actually be on its way to another spike. My prediction is this title will once again spike to just under that $140 range, probably around the time a trailer drops for the new title. So for now, we're going to go with a hold, and if for some reason you can find this game for $50 or less, you definitely need to pick it up. Usually, when a game is ported onto the next console, it's very similar to the original. However, when Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was released on the PlayStation 2 in 2003, it was created by a completely different company and was much more in line with the movie than the original game. This was just 2 years after the PS1 release of the game with the same title. So I'm sure some players were confused when this came out. Thanks to that, though, this title on the PS2 is considered a rarer title and not easy to find. It didn't feature a terrifying depiction of Hagrid like the PS1 version, but it wasn't great. It didn't sell particularly well, mostly because of the version released on the PS1 2 years prior, but it also wasn't received very well, barely sitting around the 50% mark on most major review score sites. As for price, this was another title that was greatly helped up by the pandemic, as it was previously a nearly $20 game. But in the last couple of months, it has increased from right around the $50 range to currently sitting just a hair below $70 for a complete in-box copy. In fact, a minty copy will run you well into the $80 range. With a healthy sales volume of nearly 8 copies a week, I'd put this title into the sell category. If you're going for a complete set of the Harry Potter titles, this will likely be the hardest one on PS2 for you to find. Lastly, I'd like to go over what I consider to be a bit of a sleeper game on the PS1, Strider 2. The PS1 is mostly known for the JRPGs it produced, with some of the most iconic ones released on the console. But they had quite a stable of amazing side scrolling games like Castlevania, Mega Man X series, and even Alundra. The top of that list includes Strider 2, which is a sequel from the original Strider released on arcade systems. In fact, Strider 2 was one of the rare PS1 titles with 2 discs inside a single CD jewel case, so don't forget to look for that when you're finding a copy. Released in 1999 on arcades and 2000 on the PS1, Strider 2 follows the travels of Strider Hiryu clone from the first title, as he tries to stop the Grandmaster from taking over the world. Strider has a wide array of movements, including jumping, climbing walls, and dashing for movement. The title itself is very short, with the longest playthrough taking roughly 2 hours. This is an arcade style game, so it has a ton of action in those 2 hours. Strider 2 has been steadily above the $100 price for the last year or so, but in recent months, it started to dip a little bit from the peak of $150 for a CIB copy. At the beginning of October, you could find this title for under $130, and it even dropped to roughly $110 for a bit there. However, it has since returned to its normal price, hovering around $140 for a complete in-box copy. But remember, condition is key here, and with 2 disc single jewel case games, you need to double check everything is included. I'm currently at a hold and keep an eye out for another dip to buy, as I think this game is forgotten about enough that you can find a nice copy for around $110 eventually. Well, that wraps up this month's Game and Iron video for the month of November for Sony Systems. There weren't any major movements for the PSP or Vita system, so hopefully next month we can see some awesome titles from those systems. If you enjoyed the content, please make sure to like and subscribe, and feel free to drop any comments with questions or suggestions. We plan on doing monthly videos for all major systems and more. Thanks again, and see you next time.